Welcome to season number 2 of the Breaking Up with Binge Eating podcast. For the next 12 episodes, I'm walking you through a connected series that builds step by step. You can listen in order, or you can jump in wherever you need most. This season is about moving from distress around food to something steadier and more workable, without perfection. This is the Breaking Up with Binge Eating podcast, where every listen moves you one step closer to complete food freedom. Hosted by me, Georgie Fear, and my team at Confident Eaters. If you're here because eating feels out of control, confusing, or loaded with shame, I want to start by saying this clearly. Nothing is wrong with you. Most people who struggle with binge eating or emotional eating are not lacking in willpower. They're dealing with a system that has been under pressure for a long time. And today's episode is about naming that pressure. I want to start with a scene I hear versions of all the time. Someone says, "I don't understand why I can't just stop. Other people can. I know what to do. I'm smart. I'm disciplined in other areas of my life. But when it comes to food, man, I fall apart." That sentence usually carries a lot of shame. And the assumption underneath it is, if I were stronger, this wouldn't be happening. I want to challenge that assumption. Because loss of control around food is not a character flaw. It's not a motivation problem. It's not a willpower deficit. It's what happens when pressure on the system exceeds capacity. When people talk about willpower, they usually mean something like the ability to say no. But willpower isn't a personality trait either. That's a capacity. And capacities change. They change based on how much you've eaten, how stressed you are, how tired you feel, how much you've been holding together, and how safe or unsafe your nervous system feels. If you've been restricting, underfueling, dieting, white-knuckling through cravings, or constantly trying to manage food perfectly, you're adding pressure. If you're overwhelmed, burned out, lonely, or emotionally stretched thin, you're adding pressure. If food has become one of the only reliable ways your system knows how to get relief, that too adds pressure. And eventually something gives. For some people, that looks like emotional eating, using food to soothe, numb, distract, or decompress. For other people, it escalates into binge eating, where urgency spikes, thinking narrows, and stopping feels almost impossible. These aren't separate problems. They're different intensities of the same system responding under strain. That's the frame we'll use throughout this series. So instead of asking, why can't I control myself? We're going to ask, what pressure is my system responding to? Because when pressure comes down, choice comes back online. This series isn't about becoming somebody who never wants food, never overeats, or never struggles. It's about becoming someone who understands what's happening when things get hard and has skills that actually help in real life. Over the next 12 episodes, we'll look at why restriction backfires, why stress makes eating feel out of control, how patterns form and where the binge restrict cycle actually starts, what to do when the urge is already there, how evenings and hard days change the equation, and how trust around food is built through safety and follow-through. You don't need to do this perfectly. You don't need to listen in a special way or even in order, and you don't need to fix everything at once. Today, we're just orienting. So let's come back to willpower. If willpower were the problem, people who binge eat would lack discipline everywhere. But that's rarely true. Many people who struggle with food are highly capable and responsible in other areas of their lives. The issue isn't effort. It's that effort is being applied to a system that's already overloaded. When you're exhausted, your brain has less capacity to pause. When you're stressed, your brain prioritizes immediate relief. And when food has been restricted, physically or psychologically, your brain becomes much more preoccupied with it. None of those are failures. They're all biology. So if you've been telling yourself, I just need to try harder, I want you to hear this. Trying harder at the point of overload usually will make things worse because it adds more pressure. And pressure is exactly what we're trying to reduce. One of the most important shifts in recovery is moving from self-control to self-support. Self-control says, I need to clamp down. Self-support asks, what does my system need right now? That question will come up again and again in this series. Sometimes the answer is going to be food. Sometimes it's rest. Sometimes it's structure. Sometimes it's relief. Sometimes it's learning how to tolerate wanting without panic. There's no single fix, but there is a pattern to what helps. And the first step is understanding that nothing is wrong with you. If eating feels out of control, it's not because you're weak, it's because you've been under too much pressure for too long. In the next episode, we'll talk about one of the biggest sources of that pressure, food restriction, and why people get it so wrong in binge eating and emotional eating recovery. For now, here's one gentle reframe to hold this week. Instead of asking, why did I do that? Try asking, what pressure was I responding to? You don't need a perfect answer, just try and notice. Because when shame comes down, capacity goes up. And that's where real change can begin.